Oyez, oyez, oyez. The Honorable Court of Appeals for the Fourth Court of Appeals, District of Texas, now open pursuant to call.
Good afternoon, please be seated. Welcome to the Fourth Court of Appeals. It is our pleasure to continue the tradition that has been held here at the Fourth Court for quite some time, beginning with our former Chief Justice Cadena, who's is the namesake of this building where we sit currently right now, the Justice Center, which is the Cadena Reeves Justice Center. Thank you everyone for attending, and welcome for everyone also who are participating via live stream. It's kind of cool. The court can now say we have a YouTube channel. So it is also being live streamed and will archive also on our YouTube channel. Oh. Should I turn it on? Where it says push?
There is no PA.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Louder. I will speak with my outdoor voice.
We've heard that before.
You're not asking me to repeat myself, are you, Judge? If you say so, I will. Very good. Again, welcome to the Fourth Court of Appeals. My name is Rebecca Martinez. I'm the Chief Justice of the Fourth Court. I will introduce the members of the court at this time, starting at my farthest right, Justice Todd McCray. To my immediate right is Justice Lori Valenzuela.
Good afternoon.
To my immediate left is Justice Lori Massey-Brissett, and to my far left is Justice Velia Mesa. Justices Adrian Spears and Irene Rios send their regrets and who are not able to attend with us today. It is my distinct pleasure to, at this time, introduce Mr. I believe in no particular, Mr. Dan Ciano, to come in and share remarks on behalf of the colleagues.
May it please the court.
My pleasure.
Can you all hear me? One thing I'm always been bad of is an inside voice. I've been criticized by many a court for not being able to whisper, okay? First of all, it's a pleasure to see each and every one of you. I want to thank the court for this process. It is, I've had unfortunately the honor and the sadness to watch more than one of my partners over my lifetime go through this process. Franklin D. Hauser. I met him when I came out of law school and interviewed after being lucky enough to be offered a job at 16 different law firms. The last firm I interviewed with was Tinsman and Hauser at the time, the only plaintiff's firm. I was so stupid, I didn't know there was a difference between a plaintiff's firm and a defendant's firm at that point. My legal career consisted of construction work during the summers. I'd never interviewed to do an intern program or clerkship because I could make more money in construction and couldn't afford to be at that time what they paid. They pay a lot more now to be an intern, but not at that time. Franklin interviewed me, as the sons know and as his wife knows and others, and did more listening than talking. And then when he finished, he told the people in the office that he thought I was a nice young man, but I graduated too high in my class and I wouldn't make much of a damn trial lawyer, all right? And he wasn't bashful to tell me that, all right? That was then, and over 24 years later, I watched him retire, and now the name of the firm is Tinsman and Ciano. And I've lost both Franklin and Dick and David Jane and Bob Scott, and I can go down the list. Sometimes my joke is last man standing. But let me just kind of tell you about, for me, what kind of person he was. I talked to Mr. Bartlett today, who was involved in an antitrust case, and he said, "What kind of cases did you do with Franklin?" And my answer is there wasn't a kind of case that Franklin wouldn't look at, nor was there a case that he wouldn't want me to become a subject matter expert in and educate him. He said, "We can all be good trial lawyers, but we need a subject matter expert, and you're going to do that. And you're going to spend all hours of the night and educate yourself and then teach me, and then I'm going to go and do whatever." And that's what we did for over 20 years. We did antitrust cases, libel and slander cases, construction law cases, every kind of negligence and products liability case. He did federal court, state court, and then one day handed me a file and said, this is a product liability case involving injury to small children when they place weight on an open oven door. 3 other lawyers have turned this case down. You're going to take it and you're going to try it to verdict. Now, when Franklin Hauser told you you were going to do something as an associate, you didn't say, no, I don't agree with that. You did what Franklin told you to do. And Franklin, when I was a young lawyer, took a certain number of files and he put a great big T on it. And the first time he did it, I said, what is that T for? He says, that's a case you're going to try. And I said, well, Mr. Hauser, what happened if they offer fair value in the case? He said, you can make every case go to trial and you can make every case settled by the way you present it to your client, and you're going to try those cases. I did that for 3 years. Now, honestly, I thought that's what you were supposed to do. Years later, I went, wait a minute, it's the client's case, not my case. But I was very successful in doing it, and that was his manner of training me. I told Judge Beery a minute ago, I can still remember showing up with, back then it was red ropes. We didn't have computers back then. Heck, we didn't even know what a computer was. And you'd try to reach a resolution in the case, and if you couldn't, you went across the street and went to the bar across from the hotel and sat down there and tried to work it out with the other side. But, you know, Franklin was unique as a trial lawyer. As a result of that case that he gave me, which was a stove tip-over case, I ended up in more than 30 state courts throughout the United States. I traveled the United States handling cases until that product defect was changed. And Franklin had a philosophy, should not only is it a case where you're seeking compensation, but change the way safety worked. He made it so that the products were safer, or pulled them from the market, or demanded that they get pulled from the market as part of the settlement. I can't tell you the number of trucking companies that modified their policies, flammable fabrics for children's nightwear, 10 fire cases, the Pinto cases, Dodge Dart cases. I could go, Ford's defective steps on its vehicles. Franklin would find a cause and he would chase that cause. And then his closing arguments, I actually started making notes of them when I was a young lawyer. I'd call them, you know, the Rosa Parks closing argument, or the Father Tadicus closing argument, or the human garbage closing argument, or the I'm sorry you've lost, Mr. Ciano closing argument. Believe me, I almost fell out of my chair when he started, and he looked at me, he said, I'm sorry you've lost. I can still remember, and all the jurors looked and like, what is wrong with you? What kind of lawyer would tell the client and the young associate you lost right out of the box? And he knew that the jurors would then surround that ridiculousness. And then he turned around and said that, but there's only one thing that can save you, Mr. Ciano. It's U12. And immediately their chests came out and the response was, we're going to make the thing right. And he did. And the jurors did. You know, I watched him in the days of demonstrative evidence. I still remember, I told someone the other day about the defectoscope. There's some head shaking. Franklin had a microscope he got from an auction at a high school. He used it at the winery to examine stuff. But Franklin, when something went bad, if it was a metallurgical failure, et cetera, he would go, let's get the defectoscope. And then he would, you know, look around and get there. And I still can remember this day in a case involving a ignition, involving a walkie-talkie type device. And Franklin took that defectoscope and he duct taped it, ripped it out, and put it on the microscope and zoomed in and asked the court for permission to let the jurors all look through the scope to see the charring on the metal pieces. It shows that's where the ignition came. And each one would, you know, wiggle down and look at Franklin and go, shake his head. And he knew how to do that better than anyone I knew. You know, I can remember trying to get up. You know, the court just had this circumstance of a electronic problem. I knew enough about computers early to know if it was broken, he was going to blame one person if it didn't work. he would look at everyone else, but then he'd look at me, he goes, you make that work, you fix it. He didn't know how to fix it, but he knew that this would fix it, you know? And I can remember the defense lawyers were trying to put something up on the screen, and they had not pushed the function key and switched over so that it would display visually and for themselves. And I started to get up, and he just jerked me back in the table. And I went, well, as a civil lawyer, that's what I'm supposed to fix that, right? And he goes, wait for it. And he goes, and I looked at him and I went, he goes, just wait. And they fumbled around for about 2 minutes, and he goes, now fix it. And then I went over and said, if you just push function key and push this, and all of a sudden it displayed, and all the jurors. But that's what he knew. He had the innate ability, better than any lawyer, and I've had the joy of seeing some spectacular trial lawyers all over the country. No one, and I'll repeat this to anyone that I see, no one did it better Franklin when he was on the mark. He just had and his intellect was frightening. I had a rocket case where a rocket flew up, rotated at about 3 feet, traveled at 300 feet per second, and struck a 4-year-old, and on the same day struck a 21-year-old military woman. Same rocket, 2 different places, hundreds of miles apart. Think of the odds of me taking a missile, saying I'm going to hit you at 50 yards. How many of those missiles flew around? You know, and Franklin looked at the missile and in 30 seconds said, oh, I can see what your problem is. You have a problem with nodular erosion and instability. You know, and I went, really? He goes, yeah. And he says, you need to get yourself a rocket scientist. And sure enough, I went to Sandia Laboratories and hired a rocket scientist. And the rocket scientist looked at it and he goes, I think I know what the problem is. Of course, I was ready. I said, nodular erosion that failed to provide adequate stability. He goes, holy cow, how would you know that? But think of that. Franklin Hauser was smart enough to know what the rocket scientists knew. And that was just one example after another, after example over his life. And as anyone knows, he loved to tinker. He was the Benjamin Franklin of lawyers. If there was something he could tinker with, he loved to do that. I called him the Renaissance man. In some of the closing arguments, I said, I wish I was, I can remember Dan Matthews, who was the head lawyer, Fulbright and Jaworski, and Franklin Hauser, and I had to get up and do the opening. I said, I'm embarrassed. I don't have the intellect and the reading capacity. I said, I watched the Dukes of Hazzard and watch the vehicles flying over, and then I would, Franklin would always say, here's something involving Socrates, or here's something out of the Bible, mix that in with your opening statement. And he would always say the same thing. If we got 40 minutes, he would always want half for his closing. And he would say, you got 20 minutes and you better give me 2 minutes back. He would always take something off. You better give it 2 minutes back. I enjoyed his company like no others. In the beginning, it was do whatever he did. Then we became friends, and Franklin would begin every morning like this. And then I would respond back. And that would mean we're going to meet at the taco place downstairs for breakfast. Nothing else, just those 2 words. I'll finish with where I went from a lawyer that did whatever did to a guy that became a smart aleck over time. Franklin and I were involved in many airplane crash cases, sadly. Franklin knew how to fly better than any pilot I knew. Dick Tinsman was a pilot. Franklin was a much better pilot than Dick Tinsman was ever going to be. And we had to bring some parts back from a crash that happened in Alpine, Texas, Twin Sisters Peak. A plane missed the runway by almost 4 miles, crashed, and everyone on board was killed. And we were transporting product back. And Franklin, some of you probably don't know, occasionally had a lead foot. He went a little faster than the speed limit on occasion. On that occasion, he was doing 85 and a 60 with his trailer, with the Suburban pulling the materials. And the police officer, a fine DPS officer, said, he looks at him, he goes, sir, do you understand that you were speeding over the limit? And do you have any explanation for that? and I'm in the passenger seat, and this is where I learned to be a smart aleck from him. I said, "Officer, it's funny you say that because it wasn't 2 miles back." I said, "Franklin, you're going way too fast." And he said to me, "I don't care. No cops out here is going to catch me." The police officer looked at Franklin. He said, "Friend of yours?" He says, "Not anymore." He says, "What is he?" He goes, "Ex-employee." He writes him a ticket and Franklin does what Franklin did best. Now it's your turn. Get behind the wheel. You put your foot on the accelerator and you get to 85. Do not go 84. Do not go 86. Go 85. Not 20 miles later. Del Rio Police Department, I'm now into a new county. And of course, he says, "Sir, you were exceeding the speed limit." And I go, and he of course responds, "You know, it's funny, just a mile or two back," and he get and the same thing. But that's what we developed into with time. I miss him every day, just like I'm sure each of you do. He was gregarious, he was funny, he was intellectual, he was a tinker. And when I look back as we were here going through and I saw that it was 25 years ago that he retired and became a recovering lawyer as a wine specialist. I look back and I still to this day laugh and cry about the many things we did. I can remember being with Bonnie when I had the joy of, I carry a harmonica with me just in case it's anyone's birthday or close, all right? And I can still remember playing Happy Birthday to Franklin and watching him come to tears shortly before he passed. He provided me great joy. I know he provided great joy to each and every one of you. And I know up there he's telling some joke or tinkering or explaining to God about nodular erosion. Thank you for the curves.
Thank you, Dan, Mr. Siano. At this time, I'd like to recognize the members of the Hauser family who are here present with us here at the courtroom. We have family members attending, including Bonnie Hauser, Nihan, former spouse, daughter Sabrina Hauser Amaya, and spouse Hector Amaya, and son Sloan Hauser and spouse Peggy Hauser. Very good, welcome. We also have additional family members I'd like to recognize include Sabrina Hauser Amaya and spouse Hector, daughter, and son Paige Hauser and his spouse Christy, and another son Elliot Hauser and his spouse Christine, who live out of state. We'll just say hi on the hello. There's also 7 grandchildren: Sage, Booth, Vaughn, Scarlett, McCarthy, Franklin, and my favorite name, Nola. So thank you for attending. At present now, I understand that we would like to invite, that's my next point, invite Sabrina Hauser Amaya to come and speak, please.
Sorry.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you. My name is Sabrina Hauser Amaya. I am the oldest and the only daughter of Bonnie and Franklin. And as you have just done, recognize my mom being here and my brother Sloan and Peg and his wife Peggy and Paige. Unfortunately, Elliot lives in Nashville and wasn't able to join us. I also want to thank the judges in the 4th Court of Appeals for honoring my dad and also the San Antonio Bar Association. I do not know or understand how this comes about, but my mom and I were talking about this being a really big deal. So I don't know if it's a nomination process. It's really immaterial. It's just very nice to know that he is going to be honored today. I know that he's in heaven watching, and he would be nonplussed by this Ruckatuck. This Ruckatuck being, this is a hassle. I don't want to be recognized. This is too much trouble. Get on with it. So he's up in heaven saying, get on with it. When Mom and I were planning this event, we talked about how this thing would look and feel and who would speak. Of course, Dan was at the top of the list, the loquacious law partner, and the one few friends that he had, lawyer friends. My dad was not a person with a wide berth of so-called friends. He was rather stingy with his friendship hand. And those of you in this room know that. Those of you who were bestowed this marker are blessed beyond understanding. That being said, my talking today is a reflection of him as a family man. Sorry. I know I'll be woefully underrepresented for my brother and my mom, so I'm going to do the best that I can. But it reflects about how I feel being within and outside the Hauser fishbowl, which as brothers and sisters we are. When writing this, several distinct themes and words came to mind. The first is grit. I know that there are stories of him being born on my grandmother's or his grandmother's kitchen table. I don't know if that's true or not. His parents, Mildred and Venus, his upbringing was full of grit, having been born in and during the Depression. Being born on the kitchen table is quite ironic for those of you who know my dad. And it's a laughable emoji this time and day and time. In the middle of the Depression, times were tough. I would hear from my grandmother and my grandfather about what they did to survive. My grandmother was full of grit. Those of you who knew Mildred knew that. My grandfather was the biggest hearted man you would ever meet. My dad got both. Therefore, that grit and those family values that were bestowed upon him, he carried into this family. I know it served him well because his grit was always there. Sometimes front and center, as Dan has described, sometime behind the scenes. Through this grit, his determination, his doggedness to fight for the underdog, to correct the wrongs, and perseverance are woven into my very being. The next is graciousness, not to be confused with grace, which I will get to later. Like many of us, we've received my dad's grace. But like grit, it was either front and center or behind the scenes. Sometimes you knew or never knew that my dad had intervened, either by his thoughts, words, or deeds. I have many personal examples. This shows my mother and my brothers do, and all of you here. But it wasn't until after his death that I connected the dots to one situation for myself. After I graduated from college, I was out on my own. I was so excited, had my own apartment, my own paycheck at $12,000 a year. I thought that was a lot of money back then. I thought I died and gone to heaven, but I needed a new car. So I called my dad and I said, I want to buy a new car. I've done the budget, I've done the math, I know what I can afford. I need you to come to Dallas and help me negotiate. This is, mind you, a 21-year-old in the early 1980s. So he comes up, we go to the Honda dealership, I've got everything picked out. I wanted the sole responsibility of paying for it. What I thought I could afford and what I could really afford were at diabolical opposites, as you can imagine. I hadn't even considered TT&L. What the hell was that? So we settled on the most basic Civic, 5-speed, because an automatic cost more at the time. After working out the numbers with the salesperson, it cost $20 more a month than I could afford. I told the sales guy I couldn't do it, and we walked away. My dad was silent during the entire negotiation process. He did not try to negotiate a better deal. He didn't pull out a wad of cash. He didn't offer his checkbook. He just sat there and let me listen. And hearing some of the stories from you today, or stories I hadn't heard either, very similar experiences. I naturally felt sad, but I felt more proud that I had managed to stick to my budget. And in my mind, I had negotiated this deal right in front of my dad. I still felt like a kid to him. But it was more important that I make him proud. Because as a Hauser kid, at least for me, I was more afraid of disappointing him and my parents than any punishment that could have been meted out by a coach, a teacher, even the police. He would say to us, "Do not use your quarter on me." And he meant it. But that's not the end of the story. Several days later, the Honda guy calls me back and says, "Oh, the car's been put on sale," or something like that. They could meet my meager budget. It never dawned on me that my father had graciously intervened. I don't know that for a fact, but I didn't realize that until after his death. And I had connected the dots. We can all remember as young people to have your first payment book that you tore off the page and what that sounded like, and you attach a check and you put it in the mail. That was the epitome of what they now call adulting. Through the years, and even after his death, there's more and more examples that have bestowed his graciousness that came to the surface from my mom, my brothers, colleagues, and family friends, that we have all felt it. The third theme was grace. We all know families and individuals within families have their own struggles. We were no different. Obviously, 4 children in the house, with the oldest being and the youngest being 8 years apart. It was chaos. My poor mother was a marathon competitor and champion, running us all to our activities, sometimes have to be present at 2 events at the same time. But grace came to the forefront when my dad accepted Christ. He accepted Christ. I can't say from the outside that anything looked different, but the inside dynamics changed drastically. At that time, I had no idea that my dad was struggling terribly. I only learned that through my mom in little snippets. Those who knew him well know his testimony. I remember my mom telling me that my dad had accepted the Lord. And then I cried because I had accepted the Lord that summer at Laity Lodge. I knew what that grace felt like. His grace was abundant to me, myself, and to many of us sitting in the chairs today. When I asked my brothers if they had anything to say that they wanted to say publicly, none offered, but my mom offered this. His heart and his mouth mellowed over the years. Every day he would tell me he loved me, and usually right before the light went out at night. He was so thankful the quality of our marriage and how well our offspring were handling life's struggles. Finally, peace and salvation. Those who knew my dad well knew that those were 2 words that were close to his heart. Not dwelling on this a lot, I want to leave you with something that came across to me from a friend of mine that sends me daily Bible verses and stories. And his story was, I read recently a post, Sabrina, titled Salvation to Go. What if churches had a drive-through? Could I get communion water combo with a large grape juice? And hold the judgment, please. Oh, can I get some extra forgiveness today? Some forgiveness packets. Actually, better make that a supersized blessing. It's been a rough day. This isn't fast food, that's salvation. It's funny, but in the microwave age that we live in, it hits right on target. The truth is you can't buy or pick up forgiveness, grace, grit, graciousness at the window. You have to earn it in some ways, and in other ways it's given to you. Only the Holy Spirit can open the door of anyone's heart. And that's what makes it real. Grace isn't fast food. It's the feast of the forgiven. I think this sums up my dad in a lot of ways, especially after the winery sold and his health declined. On the Thursday before his death, the following Tuesday, I was visiting and I was leaving town the next day for a business trip. We were talking about some struggles that I was dealing with. And he had started telling me repeatedly how proud he was of me. I knew he was proud of me, but I'm a lot like him. Don't make such a big deal of it. Let's move on. And then he said something to me I had never heard him say before. You need not worry. I've made sure you are taken care of. And I said, Dad, I don't need money. He just smiled and said, I'll see you when you get back. Unbeknownst to me at the time, his final words had a farther reaching meaning. God knew the date on the calendar. We did. But the calendar dates for the rest of us keep marching on. All we can do is serve up the daily power of grit, graciousness, and grace so that we may know peace and salvation. I know my dad is at peace and he has reached salvation. My remaining hope is that when he got to heaven, he asked God for the corner office with a vineyard view. I want to read one last thing that my mother and my youngest brother penned. Elliot is a singer-songwriter, and we really struggled with what to say on his, for his epitaph on his funeral marker. And this just sums it up beautifully. The seeker of truth, the lawyer of merit, the maker of wine, the lover of family, and the servant to God. Thank you. Oh.
Thank you, Sabrina. At this time, before I recognize the San Antonio Bar Association President, Nick Gwynn, I would be remiss to also recognize a member of the judiciary that's here, the Honorable Fred Berry from the U.S. District Court Bench. Thank you for being here, Judge. At this time, I'll invite Nick, Mr. Gwynn, our president, to present.
Thank you, Madam Chief Justice, and may it please the court. You know, I thought it'd be tough to follow Dan, but Ms. Hauser, Amaya, that was wonderful. My name is Nick Gwynn, and I have the honors of serving as this year's president of the San Antonio Bar Association. And it's truly an honor to be with you today, to be with the Hauser family and all these friends and family of Franklin D. Hauser. My parents are both attorneys here in San Antonio. My dad practices criminal law, and my mom has spent most of her career with the city attorney's office. And I share that with you because other than my dad's law practice, I think that the law firm of Tinsman and Hauser, now Tinsman and Ciano, was probably the first law firm that I ever heard of. My mom interned with Tinsman and Hauser when she was a law student. And just my entire life, I've always heard nothing but wonderful things about the firm and Mr. Hauser. So again, it really is an honor. I'm here today to read a resolution of the San Antonio Bar Association for you regarding Mr. Hauser. This is the memorial resolution on the death of Franklin D. Hauser on behalf of the San Antonio Bar Association. Whereas Franklin D. Hauser, a beloved member and life fellow of the San Antonio Bar Association, was born on January 30th, 1934 in Arkansas City, Kansas, to Mildred and Bemis Hauser, and passed away peacefully on February 6, 2024. Franklin lived a life marked by integrity, faith, and service to others, earning the respect and admiration of colleagues, family, and friends alike. Whereas Franklin graduated from Kansas State University in 1955, where he was active in debate, Sigma Alpha Epsilon, SAE fraternity, and ROTC. Following service in the U.S. Army at Nike Missile Base in Germany, he earned his law degree from the University of Texas Law School in 1960. Whereas after passing the bar, Franklin joined House, Mercer, House, and Brock in San Antonio, gaining valuable trial experience before forming Tinsman and Hauser in 1970. Throughout his career, Franklin was known for his tireless advocacy and principled representation. He devoted himself to improving product safety and consumer protection, contributing to meaningful reforms in automotive and industrial design. His peers recognized his excellence with inclusion in the first and many subsequent editions of the Best Lawyers in America. Whereas Franklin's life was marked by faith and community service, he led Bible study ministries across San Antonio and in retirement founded Dry Comal Creek Vineyards, pioneering wines from the Black Spanish varietal. Whereas Franklin was a devoted husband, father, and grandfather, he is survived by his wife of 68 years, Bonnie Hauser, daughter Sabrina Hauser Amaya, sons Paige Hauser, Sloan Hauser, and Elliot Hauser, and grandchildren Sage, Booth, Vaughn, Scarlett, McCarthy, Franklin, and Nola. He will be remembered for his humor, intellect, generosity of spirit, and steadfast faith. Be it resolved that the San Antonio Bar Association and the Fourth Court of Appeals of Texas express their genuine regret on the death of Franklin D. Hauser and express their sincerest sympathy to his family and friends. Be it further resolved that this resolution be appended to the minutes of the San Antonio Bar Association and copies sent to his family. Be it further resolved that this resolution be placed in the permanent records and minutes of the Fourth Court of Appeals of Texas, dated the 6th of November, 2025. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ginn, this resolution will be included in the records of the Fourth Court of Appeals, as will be the transcript and video that is being taken. I will recognize right now with gratitude Mr. Steve Lopez from the Hoffman Reporting. The services of both the video and the transcript have been given for the last more than 2 decades. And Mr. Lopez has been here at every court memorial to contribute this, and that will be, once prepared and finalized, will be given, a copy of which will be given to the Hauser family. I'm always moved by these court memorials. I knew Mr. Hauser. I didn't know him as well as most members of the bar, but I did have, let's just say, memory of being having observed both the wisdom and his wit. If I could share some comments that he has given me, some that really aren't appropriate for being on the record. But now I think I recognize, having heard both the stories of Dan Ciano about Frank, I have a feeling that probably he takes credit for some of the successes that really should be given to Frank. Because I think we, like he, have the benefit of being able, in our litigation practice, before I was a jurist, I was a trial litigator, much like Dan, but he does it much longer and very likely better than I did. But I've learned from him as much as he has learned from Frank and others. And I share only my observation, one that I've often make during the course of these court memorials. I learned so much about not the meaning of life, but how we contribute on the short time that we have on earth. Grit, as was said, which I define as basically passion and perseverance. Passion to be able to pursue long-term goals, and the perseverance to pursue long-term goals. To the extent that we as lawyers, I call us gladiators, pursuing what Frank has successfully done his grit to pursue what really were accomplishments on behalf of his clients, whether it's to protect children, protect the environment, protect, consumer, protect us. It is too often that we lose those gladiators. But when I have the one distinct pleasure of serving, I think the most important for me is to preside over these, because it is a blessing to be reminded about what our purpose is, to continue to serve with grit in whatever way we find, whatever passion we wish to pursue, but also to recognize that our biggest contribution is to those outside this courthouse. Dan being the only friend he had at the courthouse, apparently, but really the impact that he had on the family, and the fact that I also share being a daughter of a military man. I can imagine that what you learned at the dinner table was much like what I did, and other members like Justice Paul as well. I have. We learned those common examples of grit. We do that because of the discipline that it takes for individuals who serve in such a way, as Abraham Lincoln would say, willing to give a true measure of devotion. That takes something. So I can share with you the loss. Fortunately, I'm blessed to still have my dad as Just Valenzuela does too. But we I think take away so much to hear those stories. So on behalf of the court, we are humbly grateful that you're willing to share it with us in the tradition that we now continue, it being the court memorials, where we do celebrate, again, the lives of members of both bar and bench who we have lost. So thank you for the opportunity to be able to witness his life and his contributions to the world. So thank you again. I'd like to recognize that these donuts here were provided by Aaron McNeese and John Gaypart. Did you make them? Is what I'm really curious. But thank you again. I see many photos framed to share reflections, just reflections and snapshots of Frank's life. And so with that, I would like to share with you that the court will be dismissed and closed. The courthouse will be provided to the Hauser family to be able to mix and mingle and share the memories that we all share. The court members will come down and enjoy that time with you as well. So court is adjourned for the rest of the day in honor of Mr. Franklin D. Hauser. Again, on behalf of the court, we are very grateful to have been invited to be able to do this close for the family, and many prayers